Yesterday, as I was looking at YouTube, I came across a picture. In the picture, there was a slave, and I don't know if he was on a boat or what have you, but he had chains on, and he also had a net over him. So that means he was bound twice. And these were the words that was on the caption. Something similar to this is, how can these evil people teach me anything about Christianity? So that got me to thinking. And then I had a conversation that later on that night with somebody, and I asked them who was a Christian. And I'm going to go into that. You ever ask yourself why they always tell you the two things that not talk about is, politics and the church or Christianity or something like that? The two things that have hurt, especially people of color, the most, we are told not to talk about it. And for the most part, a lot of people have stuck to that. But now you can see that people realize that the government, politics, are only serving themselves. They're not serving us. Okay? And I apologize in advance if anybody takes what I'm saying, really negatively, because all I'm doing is reveal what is written. That's all. And I don't have even the time to hate the people who've done what they're doing now, what they have been doing for centuries. But I'm going to give a shout out and respect to a multidisciplinary researcher, Dr. Diop. And I won't be giving you his first name, middle name. I won't be doing all that, because if you don't know nothing about him and you're not willing to research it, I'm not going to give it to you, because do like I did. I was interested. I went, looked it up, and I read. But he says, Christian challenge or critical challenge to Orthodox scholarship's interpretation of Egypt as a white civilization which arose during the 19th century to reinforce European racism and imperialism. Amassing evidence from the linguistic to the archaeological, from the historical to the philosophical, demonstrates that Egypt was a Black civilization and that Blacks are the rightful owners and heirs to Egypt's proud legacy. Moreover, he shows through superbly detailed documentation that the Greek civilization, long revered as the birthplace of Western thought, owes a substantial debt to European ideas and accomplishment. Furthermore, I'll go further than that. And Egypt owes a substantial debt to Kush and the civilization that they came from. And we can go on and on and on. Now, I don't want to go exactly right into the religion or spiritual aspect aspect of what I'm trying to say, because there was something very important that he said about European racism. And so there's a man that needs to be heard, and I will call him a master researcher, because we have legends that people, especially our young people, have never heard of. Mr. Neely Fuller is one of them. I had a mentor, we call him my big brother, who told me that you got one education, where's your African education? Where's your people's education? You know, and I understand now that self-educated men are probably better schooled than those who went to these prestigious college campuses, who was taught mostly about Europeanism and not their own spirituality, mark on this civilization, on this world, on this earth. What? Civilizations are usually built on civilizations, and the further you dig, the darker the soil gets and the darker history gets. It's no longer African history, European history, Asian history. History is history. And guess what? It's coming up and telling stories that you don't want to hear. But even if you don't believe the stories, you have to believe the DNA.
About white supremacy. Well, the basic quote that I have in the front of the book, Textbook for Victims of Racism, is, if you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Thank you very much. I want to move right into the conversation that we were having earlier in the context of this murder or killing out in Baltimore and the killings across the U.S. that we're seeing by the police against African people. You discuss within your book the 9 basic areas of people activity, and one of them is war and warfare. How would you explain how warfare fits into white supremacy and the attacks on black people by these white cops and black cops? Well, it's not just cops as such. Actually, I have a different way of expressing what is going on. Actually, police officers do not do unjust harm to people. Police officers do not mistreat people. Race soldiers do. Now, what is a race soldier? A race soldier is a person who is a white supremacist acting like he's a police officer, or she. Might be a he, might be a she, but they are imposters. They're not police officers. We need to change the language so that we don't lump everybody all in the same category. And because there are people who are trying to do police duties, which is protect and serve, or whatever it is that they contracted, they made a contract to do. Now, but a white supremacist has one agenda, and that's to be a white supremacist. And white supremacists, or any white person, a white supremacist is any white person, male or female, who believes in and who practices white supremacy by doing what? By trying to dominate or continue to dominate people who are classified as non-white, and in that domination, mistreating the people. That's what racism is for. Racism is about mistreatment. It's not just about being proud of something, or your color or your height or your weight or anything like that. It's about mistreatment. It's not just about being proud of something.
Now, I'm going to hold up here because TikTok won't allow me to go any further than 10 minutes, 11 at the most. But I have, this will continue on YouTube, and I just want to say something. It's funny how our main documents, things like the Bible, the Constitution, it says it's for we the people, you know, but it also says that the Constitution does not set forth requirements for the right to vote. As a result, the outset of the Union, only male property owners could vote. African Americans were not considered citizens, and women were excluded from the electoral process. Native Americans were not given the right to vote until 1924. So I ask you, under these conditions, you base everything on the tenet of Christianity as though you are a Christian. But as I will read further on YouTube, I question some of those thoughts.
You know, your color or your height or your weight or anything like that. It's about mistreatment. If you are racist, you believe in mistreating people. That's your whole reason for being. Dominating and mistreating people based on color.
And that's
but Mr. Fuller, one question I would have is how do you distinguish between a police officer and the imposter race soldiers you describe them when, given the context we're in, wouldn't the entire institution of police be race soldiers? Is it possible in this context to not be a race soldier and be in the police or in the military, extending that?
No, it's not impossible, but every victim of racism should suspect that any white person wearing a badge and a gun may be, and I want to underline may be a white supremacist. So when you see them coming, you consider already a prisoner of war. It's not like you're being captured. You've already been captured because you're in a world system of white supremacy anyway. You're already in prison. All black people on the planet Earth are already in prison. Now, when we are put in what we call something that we call a prison, jail, a stockade, some type of prison camp, you might say, this is what, in my book, I define as greater confinement. You're already confined just by being on the planet if you have color in your skin, because the world government is the system of white supremacy. You're born in that system. White people and black people, all non-white people and all white people are born in the system of white supremacy because that's the only government on the planet. According to what? According to the evidence and according to logic. Now, there are people who will say, oh, no, that's absurd. That's not true. There's all kinds of governments on the planet. No. You either have white supremacy or you don't. There's no such thing as white supremacy being in one place and not being in every place. Otherwise, it couldn't be supreme. Most of the world is classified as non-white. Most of the people on the planet. So you either have white supremacy or you don't. I claim that you do. Now, that claim is either true or false. There's no wiggle room in between. And so I'm saying that if you are classified as a black person, when you see a person with a badge and gun coming and that person is white, that person most likely may be a racist. And you are already captured. Now, in a war, when you run from a soldier, a race soldier, or any other kind of soldier in a war, and we are in a war, that soldier will shoot you. Now, if you don't expect that, then you haven't been educated in the world that you're in. That's a given. We shouldn't keep shilly-shallying and playing with that. I mean, thinking that you have the privilege to say, man, you ain't telling me nothing. I ain't going nowhere. Take these cuffs off me. I'll do this and whatnot. No, you ain't got no right to do this. I got my rights. I know my rights. No, 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 no. You're a prisoner of war. A prisoner of war, if he heads for that fence or she heads for that fence, and when I say fence, I mean just run it. Just run it. Expect death. DEATH. And if you don't know the world that you're in. You don't know the reality. We have to be real. We have to stop playing like this is some kind of schoolyard game. This is not. This is absolute war. And you have to consider yourself a prisoner of war if you're wearing black in your skin or any non.
I'm going to stop it right there, and you can actually look at this. This is Mr. Neely Fuller. Yeah, I think you need to listen to what he has to say. I don't have the time to go any further because I want to come up with something that I will close with. Why is certain things supposed to be you can't speak about it? It's so sacred. Well, I don't see it that way, because I want to let you know about something that was in place in Egypt before the 1st century, and it was called Ma'at, and they had 42 principles of it, and it represented the ethical and moral principles that all Egyptian citizens were expected to follow in their daily lives. Make no mistake that before Egypt, there was probably Cush, and they came from the upper part of the Nile, if I'm not mistaken. And so when you talk about how great Egypt is, then you do not know the great civilizations that existed from which they came. Now I want to move on to what most people call the 10 Commandments. And these are supposed to be things that Christians live by. And this didn't exist until the 1st century, but we also know that every one of these commandments are embedded, and we already know they come from the principles of Ma'at, but nobody will tell you this because it's been happening with history, religion, spirituality, whatever you want to call it. And somebody co-ops. They take from other people and they put their name on it. Something similar to a handbag made in China, but shipped directly to the United States. And when they get to the United States, they put those bags in a warehouse and they stamp a name on there. Okay? One of these supposedly big time names, that everybody wants to buy a bag. And then they mark it up, thousands percentages, a markup. Okay? Because then all of a sudden it's not Chinese no more, it's American. And you sell it at American prices. And who are the people who buy it? The citizens, the same ones that you're supposed to be taking care of. These are most of the people are what you would call so-called Christians. And have you ever noticed that we talk about these people with reverence, but being a pastor, a reverend, I don't know about the priesthood, but I do know what they did and have done, okay? Because people like Spain, France, you know, all of the people that came from Europe or European destinations and went to Africa had the okay from the church. Now, I didn't want to get the 10 Commandments in an adult form, so I'm going to read you the children's version of the 10 Commandments, because that way we all will be on one level. We won't misunderstand nothing, right? You see, these 10 Commandments was what make you a Christian. But most of us know that even we fail this. The preachers fail this. The priests fail this, okay? And how do they fail this? They say love God more than anything else. But how are you going to love God when you just made yourself God? And how did you make yourself God? By making some things more important than God, like wealth, power. They said, do not say God's name without love and respect. So if you are portraying yourself to be God, then you want his respect and his love. But you're not the real thing. But you're portraying that because you want what the creators created. You wanted what everybody else has had since you came into being. Honor the Lord by resting on the seventh day of the week. Well, you rest 7 days, but you put the people that you enslaved to work for 7 or 6, but then they have to go to your church where you teach your teachings, or you co-op, take from others, write it in the language that you want, the narrative that you want, which puts you as the master and them the slave. Love and respect your mom and dad. Well, this is the big one for me. You see, all people are connected. And this is something that most people hate, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. Just like Christianity didn't come into being until the 1st century, when they rewrote some of the tenets of Ma'at. They took that and they put it in a book and said God inspired. Well, if it was God inspired, there would be no mistakes. And the Bible has many mistakes. And then all of a sudden, you find out that they have 66 books, but they had originally 82 or something like that. I don't want to go into all of that, but you took things out of the book that you wrote, that you got from the Egyptians, from their 42 principles of Ma'at, and who knows where they got it from, because these are old civilizations, and you made it yours. And then you drove that point home to your own people, to your slaves, even your children. The 6th one says, the commandment never hurt anybody. Well, we know you can't be a Christian there, because if you enslave people, you not only hurt people, but you killed people. And always be faithful to your husband and wife. Oh my goodness. This one has been trampled over by priests, by reverends. You know that being a man of the pulpit, that you could be a felon. We didn't even know that you could have a felon as a president, but we found out. So how can all of this be blessed by the Christian church or blessed by Christians? Because you see, you're not supposed to be able to transgress these 10 commandments and be a Christian, I don't think. But it seems like it's okay to be a pastor or a priest and do things to people that sometimes we can't even talk about. Don't take anything that isn't yours. Well, we just got through talking about white supremacy. They've taken everything wherever they went that wasn't theirs and made it theirs. They just wiped out the people that was there. Oh, thou shalt not kill or hurt. So I can't see nothing on here that Christians haven't broken themselves. And you call yourself Christianity. But what is Christian about breaking the law or breaking the commandments? Always tell the truth. That's almost laughable. How do they become government officials, legislators, judges, even a president? By telling the truth. Be happy with what you have. Don't wish for other people's things. This one here, I don't know where they got that from, because rich people are never happy with what they have. They want it all. And the sad part about it is the people that they're taking it from, they believe in those people. They don't believe that they will do that to them. But it's changing now. All over these 50 states, people are starting to see the truth. The only thing that's still standing in the way is their hatred for people of color. And they have been brainwashed to think us as the enemy when they came over in bondage just like us. And they were made into what they call slave catchers and everything else. And from there, they went to policemen. And we're not the ones that's taking Medicare, Medicaid from you. We're not doing you no harm. You did us harm. But in closing, I'm going to tell you something. First, I wanted to talk about religion, what that means in a Christian context, as written by the same people who wrote the Bible. Personal or institutionalized system of belief, practices, and devotions. That's supposed to be religion. Well, they got institutionalized system right. But what type of beliefs, practices, and devotions are we talking about? Because spirituality is much different. The way that Africans, Indians, and other people worship before they were made to be Christians was different. See, they focused on non-physical parts of a person, which is the seat of their emotions and their character, their soul. Soul's seat of emotions, a person's total self. So I call in today into question, because if you don't stand for something, you have been falling for something so long, centuries, maybe thousands of years, believing the same old lies. Right now, what we have been taught over the years is being passed on and passed on. It's like you you take your babies, they don't have no knowledge of what you're doing, and you baptize them into a system that actually hates them. And I know you may not mean to, you know no better, but you do your child and yourself a disservice. So, in closing, I will tell you this. You have to stand for what is right, not what somebody tells you, because if you truly believe, you would know that a part of the Creator is in you. And you know how you know this? Because your physical body is nothing without that spirit. Once it leaves and goes, you are dead. And we question, right now, I question whether some people are the walking dead now. Because if you can treat people the way that you treat them and to have no regard for how these people are going to make it, eat, live, and all you want to do is go to the Bahamas and, basically start wars and get as much wealth as you can, what type of spirit is that?